She stood on my porch waving a clipboard like it was the Constitution and told me I had 30 days to move my cattle or I'd be forcibly removed. 30 days. On the same land my grandfather bought in 1952, the land my family had worked, bled for, and protected for 3 generations. And in that moment, staring at her smug smile and bleached hair stiff against the Texas wind, I realized this wasn't about cattle or fences or community rules. This was about someone trying to steal my family's legacy right out from under me. My name's Garrett Stone. For 15 years, I lived in Washington, D.C., drafting federal housing and HOA regulations. Yeah, the very rules people like her pretend to enforce. Then my grandfather passed and I left the bureaucratic battles behind for the Lazy G Ranch in Cedar Falls, Texas. 40 acres of prime land with oil rights circling like vultures. My mornings were supposed to be about coffee on the porch and the sound of cattle mixing with meadowlarks, not neighborhood politics. But then came Karen Whitfield. She'd moved in just 6 months earlier, dropped nearly $1 million on a McMansion in the new subdivision next to my ranch, and within weeks she was running the HOA. Within months, she was running the whole neighborhood like a tyrant. Clipboard always in hand, yoga pants that probably cost more than a month's feed, and a smile that screamed, "I need to speak to your manager from 3 counties away." The first notice taped to my door said my cattle were a nuisance threatening property values. I laughed, thought it had to be a mistake. My family had been raising cattle here since before her subdivision was a patch of dirt. But then she showed up again, this time with her cousin Dale from County Code Enforcement, snapping photos of my manure pile, my chickens, even Grandpa's old tractor like they were evidence in a crime scene. The next thing I knew, a fat envelope arrived, cease and desist accusations of health hazards, doctored maps claiming my ranch overlapped their HOA land. I kept telling myself she can't really believe this crap. Maybe she just doesn't understand how things work out here. I figured I'd sort it out with a polite conversation. Big mistake. She didn't want a conversation, she wanted a fight. And suddenly, I was the villain in a PowerPoint presentation she gave at a so-called compliance hearing in a country club conference room complete with photos of my barn, labeled as a structural eyesore. Imagine being called to sit in a metal chair while 12 suburban board members glare down like judges at a kangaroo court. That was the first time I felt the shift anger mixing with something colder, because I knew exactly what I was looking at, not HOA enforcement, not community concern, but a setup. Developers had been eyeing my land for years, and Karen had just found a way to play their game. But the game got dirtier. One week it was environmental inspectors showing up with soil kits, the next livestock vets arriving on bogus disease complaints. Every agency you could think of drove up my driveway with a clipboard looking for violations that didn't exist. My cows were healthier than half the folks at that country club, but it didn't matter. The point wasn't to prove me wrong. The point was to bury me in paperwork fees and stress until I gave up. And I'll admit it worked. There was a night I sat at my kitchen table, letters spread out like a battlefield, and I wondered if I'd made a mistake moving back. Maybe I didn't belong here anymore. Maybe I should sell before the stress tore me apart. I looked out at the dark pasture, the same fields my grandfather had walked at dawn for 70 years, and for the first time I thought about walking away. That's when Beverly knocked on my door. Nervous, soft-spoken, a retired teacher who lived in the subdivision. She sat on my porch steps, hands shaking, and confessed Karen had lied to everyone. Lied about me, lied about the HOA, lied about the money. Beverly handed me a stack of papers, emails, bank statements, and corporation forms that weren't filed. The HOA had never even been legally established. Karen had siphoned more than $100,000 from community funds and was pocketing kickbacks from a developer called Sunset Holdings if she could force me to sell. Suddenly, the fog cleared. It wasn't about me being sloppy with my cattle or stubborn about fences. It was a scam, a well-oiled, carefully planned scam. And I wasn't her first target. I felt that anger shift again from helplessness to steel. Because I wasn't just some rancher fighting alone. I was the guy who'd written the rule book she was trying to fake her way through, and now I had allies, Beverly, Dr. Martinez, the vet neighbors who'd started whispering doubts. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about striking back. So I did. filed complaints with HUD and the FBI, laid out the fraud case for the state attorney general. Beverly rallied board members behind the scenes, showing them the missing money. Jim, a retired electrician, and Maria, a paralegal, joined us. We were building a case step by step, and Karen didn't even realize the ground was crumbling under her designer sneakers. But she wasn't going quietly. She staged media stunts with kids in surgical masks, claimed my cattle were poisoning the water. She vandalized my fence with spray-painted warnings. She even hired actors to pose as federal agents and deliver forged shutdown orders. The arrogance was breathtaking. She thought I'd panic, pack up, and run. But every fake document, every false police report, every staged crisis, my security cameras and Beverly's recordings caught it all. Evidence piling higher than her lies. The breaking point came one evening when she showed up at my gate with her cousin and 2 men claiming they were there to assist with a livestock evacuation under federal authority. They started opening gates trying to drive my cattle onto the road. That's when the sheriff's cruisers rolled in, lights flashing. Sheriff Morrison stepped out weary but grinning. He'd had enough too. He cuffed her right there by the cattle gate, rattling off charges like a grocery list: conspiracy, embezzlement, impersonating federal officers, attempted livestock theft. She shrieked about government conspiracies as they shoved her into the back of the car, still clutching that damn clipboard. And just like that, the spell was broken. The neighbors saw the truth. The fraudulent HOA dissolved overnight. Federal agents moved in with investigations. The empire Karen built on intimidation and forged paperwork collapsed in front of the very people she'd manipulated. I stood on my porch that night, the cattle settling in the fields, coyotes calling in the distance, and breathed in the clean air of freedom. No press conference, no victory party, just the sound of land that had survived droughts, wars, and now Karen Whitfield. The lesson: bullies thrive on fear and ignorance. But when you know your rights and stand your ground, they fold faster than a house of cards in a Texas storm.